We're going to make a pargeting stamp in the shape of a flower. And there are lots of different ways to do this. The traditional way is to carve the stamp out of wood. And many people still do this, but I never have. So you get to learn how to do it my way. What I'll start with is a tub of clay. You can use plasticine if you like, but I prefer clay. And a tray which is 5mm deep. This comes out, it's a bottom of a cake tin. And 5mm is a really nice depth because you don't want the stamp to be so deep that it's quite difficult to get it off the plaster. But you don't want it to be so shallow that it looks mean. And 5mm is a good depth to aim for. So with a tray that's 5mm deep, I know that if I make a design that goes right through to the bottom of the tray, I'm spot on. Right, so I'll start by filling up the tray with clay. Level off reasonably well. This clay is not the smoothest clay I've ever been working with. There we are. And I conveniently have a set square here, which I might use again later, but it's really quite good for levelling off as well. And after a bit of fiddling around like that, you will end up with something which is fairly much 5mm deep. And this is the little drawing I've done of the pattern I want to make. And so if I put that on there, then I can draw around it and around the flower pattern to get the shape I'm looking for. This is a dentist modelling tool, and sometimes I use plastic clay modelling tools. Sometimes I use this tool, which is not readily available, but very nice. This one is a plasterer's joint rule, and I used that to level off the surface before I began. There, and I should be able to take the paper away and see the design marked out, ready to model. And then using my modelling tools, I will make the design. And what I'm looking at here is as if this is the wall where the final product is. So this is what you're looking at as a wall. So you incise where you want to see the incising on the actual wall. Most pargeters use a wooden stamp, which is fine, but I've never got into doing that, because the trouble with a wooden stamp is that you always have to make a negative, because what you're making is the actual stamp into the surface that you'll see on the wall, and so you have to think in reverse, which is fine. If you're into woodworking, I've never been a great woodworking person. So I use this technique, which means that what I'm modelling is what I actually will see as a finished product. So I shall just play with the surface and get it into a slightly three-dimensional shape now. Well, that's a sort of a first run and it needs a lot of tidying up, but I've incised into the surface to get the vague shape that I'm looking for. And some bits will be quite deep, like here, for example, that will be quite a deep part, and some bits are right up, so there will be no plaster taken away, like these are high points. So I shall carry on tidying it up and making it look good. And one thing I shall do as I'm doing this is make sure that there's no undercutting, because when you make the stamp from it, you want the stamp to release easily. So you want all your slopes to slope inwards. Right, so I think that will do as the design for my stamp. So I'm going to, because it's a reasonably complex shape and because the clay is quite soft, I'm going to use resin to make the stamp, pouring resin. And so the next thing I have to do is build up a little wall around it so the resin doesn't fall out. And I'll make it slightly oversized because I can always cut it back. Right, so, good. And then I suppose I could offer this one up just to make sure it still looks about how I want it. It's I think it's a bit large here. I might modify that petal a little bit. It's grown. Well, that's better. So its features are it's not got any undercutting, and it also doesn't have any very narrow lines, because if you think the material you use is sand and plaster, and so it's not a very fine grained material. And then the other problem is that when you come to paint it, if you've got any fine lines, they fill up really quickly with paint and you start to lose your definition. So you've got to have enough sort of chunkiness to it so that you keep your definition once there's been several coats of paint on it. Right, so making the mould from it. This is a 2-part liquid resin and it comes from a model making supplier. And you do this one by weight, so you have equal quantities of each by weight. So I need a set of scales. And we'll start with the resin. So we please have 42 grams of that, and then this one has to match. So I do this one with the syringe. Get it to take up, yes. and mix it up. And this resin has about 30 minutes before it sets. So actually for what we're doing, there's plenty of time. So when it's well mixed, then I can just pour it in and hope that there's no gaps in my wall. Good. So I shall leave that for 30 minutes and as it sets, it changes colour conveniently. So it's set up nicely, and I'm going to give it a handle and add a little bit of resin to the back that's got fiberglass in it to give it a bit of extra strength. So more resin. That on there and zero that. Mix up the resin again. And this time add some fibres readily available from your favourite lime supplier. So I'll paste it all over the back and then add a handle. Paste some resin over the handle. Tidy it up and leave it for another half hour to set. There we are. Good. So that should be ready in half an hour's time.